Hello, you're listening to Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast, presented by Brandon Elliott. This show will be going over all aspects of real estate investing and is intended to educate, motivate, and prepare you to take action on your first or next real estate investment. For more information, please visit BrandonElliottInvestments.com. Thank you for listening and enjoy.
Welcome back, everyone, to Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Brandon Elliott. I'm excited today. We have a special guest, a unique type of guest to the show today, which is really extraordinary. Honestly, it's in the asset real estate category, but it's something that we should all be kind of tuning into here because it's really something different, right? Colombia is one of the world's largest coffee producing countries in the world, right? And this gentleman that we have today actually is second in line and soon to be first in line for the largest coffee producer in the country of Colombia. So really awesome to be able to have a boss join us today to really be able to dive into where he started out from, the process along the way. He's raised over $28 million to this point to be able to really build up this empire and be able to make sure that we're all waking up with some good coffee in us, and really just blessed to be able to have him on today. Cole, how are you, my friend?
Doing very good, Brandon. Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate you joining. So where are you tuning in from? And for anybody out there that doesn't know more about your story, do you mind just giving that 30,000 foot view?
Sure. So I'm tuning in from Medellin, Colombia. So this is where we headquarter our coffee operations. This project, I'll give you the project background and my background in just a moment. Basically, we started about 4 years ago, all real estate backed investors. So investors very similar to, I'm sure, to your listeners. They've supported us since the beginning. We've done about 3 rounds of investment. We'll be going into a Series C here, most likely in July, which will catapult us into that number 1 position. You know, as of today, we have about 4,000 acres, American acres of land, which puts us in the number 2 position. And this year we'll be going to number 1. So it's a very exciting place to be. And myself, Cole Shephard, and I grew up, I was born in New York, grew up in North Carolina, left the US when I was about 25. I used to work with PricewaterhouseCoopers, transitioned over to Bermuda when I was about 25, doing financial services. Moved into the advisory and M&A space, same firm, Pricewaterhouse with Hong Kong. Started buying banks, insurance companies, asset managers, skyscrapers in Shenzhen, those kind of things. I worked between Beijing and Hong Kong for about 4 years and moved down to Colombia about 7 years ago. Since then, running my own businesses. I've done real estate flips in Medellin, distressed asset plays. But nowadays we play a lot really within the coffee space, obviously with the Green Coffee Company, which is our major project here at Legacy Group. And the other thing we play majorly in is kind of the digital arts and entertainment space is where I'm tuning in from today. We have our own studios here in Medellin. And these guys are major players in, the digital recording space, video game development, games for metaverse, a lot of exciting stuff. And where I'm tuning in from is called the company called Polygonus. And we're also investors in them.
This is powerful. I didn't know you're in that aspect and asset class as well. It's very a new and upcoming space, which is pretty fun.
Absolutely. I mean, we seed funded this company about end of 2019, and they've just blown it out. So I'm actually tuning in from one of the nicest office spaces. They own the whole penthouse here and one of the nicest office buildings here in Medellin. Started with 3 partners we seed funded in, and now they got about 100 of the most talented guys I've ever seen working in this company here. So I'm tuning in from one of about their 6 studios. So out of the kindness of their hearts, they set me up with their camera teams and let me do my podcast from here and make us look a little more professional.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Mm-hmm. So talk to me, when you were getting started working for that other company, obviously you started seeing, I'm sure you started getting a lot of motivation and seeing the possibilities, right? Seeing the syndication format of raising capital and securing assets, giving people strong returns, but also taking down the bigger plays that you're going after, obviously the higher rewards. So what kind of inspiration was that, and what kind of gave you the encouragement to start doing it on your own?
Sure. So when I was running M&A teams in Hong Kong, there are certain markets that people in my world didn't really care about. Latin America was one of them. Kind of one of the main ethos that I always try to keep is, go to where other people's aren't. I love that contrarian point of view, whether you're investing in real estate, early stage companies, anything. So I personally was looking to go to a more aggressive, let's say, developing market than, let's say, a developed market like Hong Kong or working out in New York or London or one of the more developed, let's say, whether it's real estate, banking, whatever. When I saw capital flows coming from Asia, at the time, we did a lot of work with asset managers there, basically unlimited capital. And when you talk about buying banks in Colombia or Mexico or Brazil, no one in that world cares. They're just so small in the scale of things. That when I came down from my brother's wedding in Cartagena, started looking at the markets, especially banking markets. Mortgage rates are incredibly high at the time, 7 years ago, still high, but just arbitrage for banks. Mm-hmm. And I saw massive opportunities, primarily in real estate, primarily what your probably audience looks after.
Sure.
All equity-backed deals. So if you're going into a multifamily development project here in Medellin or in Bogota, most of these guys are funding all equity deals. So you need to get a lot of return on your money to be able to take that risk reward that kind of rating. So what I found was there's a tremendous amount of capital going into real estate here in Latin America. Leverage was very difficult to utilize on a cost-effective, on a risk-rated basis. So I started getting into distress. I bought what is called a juzgado here in Medellin, which is like an auction sale here at like a courthouse. Started getting into those plays, flipped a couple deals that I thought was pretty good, but couldn't scale it to a level that I thought was really interesting. What we've found over the development of the asset manager legacy group, which is the logo right behind you, is that, there's a lot of American LPs who want exposure outside of the United States. And so that's what we try to provide. We provide investment products and places in companies that you couldn't get really without us, right? We bring things like coffee, unless you're a large commodity house or your Starbucks, you can't get into ag deals, right? Especially as an LP, getting in at $100,000 minimum buy-ins. Most private equity boys will make you come in at, $1 million plus for an LP position. Sure. And you don't have any say over what they're buying. You put it at $1 million LP position into a standard GPLP private equity fund, they're going to say they're going to invest in ag. Well, they have a mandate to do a pretty wide scope of acquisitions and development. What we try to do is, say, this is the assets we're going to buy. This is the only company you have to invest in and invest with us. If we promote another product that we say we're invested in personally, you don't have to invest in that. We don't do blind pools and whatnot. Yeah. And so what we found with our American accredited audience, that's very powerful. People like knowing what they're investing in. Things like coffee, it's a very natural transition from real estate because of the collateralized nature of kind of how it works. It's very similar to having, you have a land asset, you have an operator, and you have cash flows that spit off as a result of that. The difference with something like ag and what we do is you have an enterprise value play. So if you're buying a multifamily building here in Colombia, it's very difficult to sell that in enterprise value. You're doing asset values really on that, right? You could sell an owner operator of a hotel, something like that, but it's not really the same enterprise value that you can get out of a holistic company. So what we've done is, take our background of buying real estate. Obviously, my partner's an ex-M&A attorney and SEC attorney out of New York, huge bond issuances, huge stock issuances. And we've taken that capital raise background and the assets and the M&A background and kind of build that into companies that we think have huge potential for returns for our investors and frankly, just really exciting businesses to be a part of here in a developing market.
Mm. Yeah, that's powerful. It's really just mind blowing because when it comes down to capital raises, and like you mentioned before, a lot of these other big companies out there, they're not going to take anything less than $1 million plus. And,
that's right.
You have no say in where they're going. It's very broad. So I love the transparency that you guys offer and give people the options straight from the beginning. Like, hey, these other ventures that we might seek in the future, you don't need to go into that by any means,
That's right.
When it comes down to that full transparency and raising capital in general, you guys have raised quite a bit so far. And I'm curious the timelines of all this when you actually leaped out on your own and started growing this company, and then the process of raising capital and members coming on and so forth.
Sure. So when we started the project, actually, we already had the investors. We had a group of high net worth American, mostly US based investors who were comfortable in Colombian real estate, but they wanted an ag project. Right. So basically, I was in charge of creating that project for them. I had a little commodity trading house is kind of like it's a little higher end than what I was doing, but I was running my own commodity trades of fresh cut flowers. Flowers is one of the largest industries here in Colombia. And I was doing a bit of coffee trading, basically on my own dime, learning how international trading worked. So I had some connections in both the flower industry, in the Colombian coffee industry, and also in the cacao industry. And we looked at different projects in all three of those. What we found was coffee was more segregated, is decentralized. There was a lot of opportunity for scale plays where you consolidate farming estates, consolidate infrastructure, sell a little bit further down the value chain. And we believe the yields were there. So when we started the project, what I would say is almost like a venture capital type of seed funding, but with a collateralized aspect to it. We raised 5.7 million US off the bat. 5.7 for most of your guys listening, that's not going to get you too much in the US. But in Colombia, to put it in perspective, I would say, especially land assets here in Colombia, probably.
You're buying football fields, probably.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you think about that deployment, we probably bought about 600 acres on that, nice. Plus infrastructure, plus building out management teams from scratch. And, the original play was just really, it's almost like the complete real estate play of a yield-based play. And you have capital appreciation on the land and the infrastructure assets, and then you sell it further down the road. But when we started getting into, I would say, like getting into the game and starting to understand the players in the region here in Antioquia, for guys who don't know, Medellin is the capital of Antioquia, which is equivalent of a state in Colombia. We start seeing, huge problems in the market, huge gaps in the market where if you could fit in and play in a niche, you could scale this thing and make it a real enterprise. Yeah. So we kind of grew up as a real estate project that's grown into what I would say is going to be one of the most powerful enterprises in coffee in the country. And I would say half of it is you planning ahead well, having smart guys around you. Then half of it is also kind of luck. You would never know at the beginning how kind of inefficient the system runs until you actually do it, until you actually get in there and do it. And so we have the luxury of seeing it with like fresh eyes, right? So if you ask the average Colombian investor, they've been around coffee for 100 years. They don't think it's massively exciting. But when we come in it from foreigners' eyes, and we have, from our point of view, we'll say, there's a lot of ways you can make these systems more efficient. And if you can do these, what I would say is not always rocket science type of things. You bring in foreign technology that's already apparent in other ag industries, bring in management talent that's best in class, you bring in capital, and you mix that together and you're baking a cake. That cake is pretty valuable at the end of the day. And so we've kind of grown that up over time. And now we're at the point where it's almost like rocket ship launch kind of time. Now we're getting national coverage. We get to, rub shoulders with some of the most influential people in Colombia due to that Colombia's national product is coffee, actually. Yeah. So it's an exciting time to be part of the company. It's an exciting time. 3 years when you're building up, as any of your viewers would know, of building a development project, it's almost like we're launching the hotel that you've been developing the last 3 years now. And now's the time we can say, okay, now we can develop even more. Now we can plop in and say, I know exactly how much I can develop with $50 million more dollars. And this is what we expect to get out of it with more accurate projections for sure.
I love that so much because it really comes down to the immigrants, I wouldn't say way of thinking or it's really just the fresh eyes, like you mentioned, because Definitely. And we see it day in and day out when people come from other countries over into America. I've never seen it in the opposite way of going to a different country, but it proves the point right then and there because we get so complacent in our own, what we grow up in, right? In America Definitely. Or other countries. And just like you said, in Colombia, they grew up in the coffee industry. It's not exciting to them. They've, 100 plus years doing exactly that. It is what it is. The fresh eyes coming from a different area and seeing as a global type of impact, what could be done and see all the loopholes or not just the flaws, right? That can be fixed, improved, and just entrepreneurship to make something bigger and better, which is awesome. Right. So I've never seen it flip the script and go into another country. But it proves the fact right there that immigration is it's so damn powerful, because I normally see other people from other countries come over here and start from absolutely nothing and then jump into huge syndication, multifamily, or whatever it may be, and just sky's the limit. And I love that.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of it is about just getting out of comfort zones. A lot of your viewers, yourself, maybe even, you're used to working within a certain zone of the United States. Yep. And you say, look, would I look at a deal in Canada? Would I look at a deal in Mexico? Would you look at a deal in Puerto Rico? Just getting out of certain zones and say, look, it's actually not rocket science to get down there. Maybe it's in another language. Maybe it's in a legal structure that you're not completely familiar with. But you don't always have the same competition surrounding you as you would if I was doing multifamily in New York City right now, I wouldn't even know where to begin. I wouldn't even know how to deploy that capital and get cap rates that would look reasonable. I'm going to be well below inflation. You could give me $1 billion and I'll say, man, I don't know if I'm going to beat inflation right now and what's going on with some of these markets on how heated they are. So I agree with you that the immigrant mindset of how you view markets differently and getting out of your comfort zone can be, you're the best in Oklahoma City. But if you come down here and you say, look, I'm the best, but I have so much competition, you might come down to Medellin and say, man, this is a gold mine. You only do hospitals and say, look, they need to build 2 hospitals here and I'm going to kill it. I'm going to absolutely kill it because no one can compete with me. And so if you take if you have a global mindset and you're coming with real world talent, like when you come into developing markets, to me, developing markets are the most exciting to find a niche business, especially when you're an entrepreneur with, let's say, a limited partner group and you're not a huge corporate, to build something from scratch. I think developing markets are by far the most exciting to work within.
Yeah, no, I believe that. I love that. Talk to me. What is it going to take? I know you mentioned that you're very close this year. You're going to take territory for number 1 position in Colombia. Was that the goal? I know it wasn't the goal originally. You guys started like a normal syndication with an exit plan, I'm sure, down, a few years down the road. And then you saw these opportunities, you decided to take action on it and make it more of a empire, enterprise type of thing. So what is it going to take this year to get to that number 1 position?
In reality, we only have to develop what we've already bought. So it's one of those ones I can tell our investor group, I'm 100% sure we're going to get it because we already have the trees in our nursery and we just have to put them in the ground. It doesn't actually take any more acquisitions. But, our team is always looking at new exits. For instance, right now, we have 3 group acquisitions that we're looking at in the town we operate out of. We're looking at acquisition of the regions of the country. And we're basically have our own kind of like M&A team where we're constantly looking at what's the best way to grow, both from, let's say, a physical asset perspective, like an infrastructure or land asset perspective, or it can relate to distribution channels on how do you elongate your business value chain and say, let's say product transformation from just taking green coffee to roasted coffee and pushing it through a different channel, that can massively provide, significantly more profit for investors and for the business as a whole. And you can do more things. So we get to be pretty flexible with how we think about the business, with how we can push it forward. And so M&A is only one aspect of that.
Yeah. Cool. This seems like a very in-depth type of organization with many different departments. Do you mind just giving like somewhat of a breakdown of where all these different channels are kind of divided to make the system all work?
Absolutely. So right now, at full-time labor for the Green Coffee Company, we got about 180 full-time employees. Management team, let's say the executive team would be made up of a CEO, CFO, COO. And basically how we structure everything is everyone who really, let's say, runs the company on a day-to-day basis are all Colombian nationals. So myself and my business partner, both in our world, we're gringos. We're both from upstate New York. But, we do speak Spanish. We are bilingual. But, we don't run the farms on a day-to-day basis. So our executive management team and really everyone that sits on a mid and underneath, it's very important that we're seen as a Colombian company. We want that national pride. We want people to be excited about where they work. And frankly, we want them to be excited about what we do and the future growth of the company. And I think where we have the luxury, the fact of we have a lot of sustainability initiatives that other agricultural companies don't participate in here in Colombia. The ag business, especially workers, have been treated very poorly, I would say, over the history of ag. People don't pay real wages. They'll pay well under minimum wage, but we're the only ag player in coffee that pay like real pensions, health and safety, like all the things that you'd expect out of American companies, we pay down here in Colombia. We're the only ones in the country that do that. And so it allows us,
that's setting a standard too for other companies in the future, which is awesome. I love
Definitely. And you have to set that standard. And one thing, selfishly, whether you're thinking about impact capitalism or just capitalism in general, coffee is one of those businesses where the end client is demanding that you do these things anyway. The world is more transparent anyway. Not only do I want to be part of businesses that do these kind of things, but I would say for any capitalist out there that's running like coffee companies or cacao companies, banana companies, if you're not doing these things and how transparent everything is, whether it's a media transmission or it's news or whatever, you're not going to be in business very long if you don't do these.
People are going to start choosing. When they have the option, they're going to start choosing, hey, what do I really want to be a part of? What do I support more? Which I love.
Definitely.
It brings me up to a question. I know you guys treat your workers very well. Are you guys implementing any type of for-purpose type of structure or?
Yep, we do things we obviously get certified with things like Rainforest Alliance, cafe practices from Starbucks. More importantly than the certifications is kind of like the impact initiatives that we do. We found certain certifications, frankly, are quite false. They don't actually mean anything. They're more, you pay a fee. It's like a pay to play type thing that we don't really want to be involved with those kind of certifications. You see it a lot in coffee. You see it a lot in cacao and chocolate, and we don't really do those things. So the things that we really focus on, I would say, is kind of employee development and proper pay, financial inclusion, which is the financial inclusion is what I represented previously, but also education. Like we're very big into employee education. So also, we need to, there's fewer and fewer Colombians involved in the coffee industry every year. So most people that let's say you come from a middle-class family, the last thing you want to do is work in coffee, because everyone thinks of coffee as, you only go and pick beans. You don't have to have a third grade education or whatever, but that's actually not true. Yeah. A lot of our business now is really run by engineers. Our CEO and our CRO are both agro engineers, industrial engineers. We prepare and we've created all of our infrastructure from scratch because it doesn't exist globally. So if you were to come see our processing facilities in Salgar, Colombia, we were the first ones in the world to implement this technology because we literally had to import it from all over the world to create the world's best central processing facility. And we have it at our company. It's the best processing facility globally for wet mill, for taking coffee cherry and getting the seed out of it, which is coffee. So a lot of things about promoting, especially working within coffee organizations and showing how to become management figures is something that we focus heavily on. It's not about just running people out to death to do manual labor jobs from the time they're 18 to the time they can retire when they're 62. You need to develop how people work within organizations and grow your skills. And frankly, by the impact initiatives that we do, the financial salaries and packages we can provide, we have access to the best, agricultural teams in Colombia. I would say the guys that work within our firm, within coffee, they're the best and the brightest of the coffee industry, which is great from a capitalistic point of view. And it's great from being around people that are passionate and exciting about what we do every day.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And just like you were mentioning before, it's like others out there that would assume or possibly even hire somebody that isn't well educated in the space. Like, sure, you might be able to get by for a certain time period, but you're not going to produce and really systemize this and be able to grow something for the long future. Like somebody that's been there and done it and well educated on it and certified with it, it doesn't make sense otherwise.
That's right. I would call it the equivalent of like doing a trade where you get lucky one time and you say, look, I sold this one, I flipped this house and I made a good amount of profit. Whereas, I'm not trying to do flips. I'm trying to build enterprises, right? So you want to grow. I'm not interested in making $100,000 on a flip. I'm interested in building businesses that are worth, upwards of $500, $600 million. That's what we're looking to do.
That's so good. I love it. Talk to me about the problems that go on within the business, and something that comes to mind when, we always hear, I think just ignorant Americans or myself probably just in general thinking about Colombia or drug related stuff or, gangs or anything down there. Is there issues that you guys need to worry about or be mindful of?
Sure. I would say, American news is far more aggressive towards Colombia than is the reality.
American news is fake news. So let's just, cut to the chase. Yeah. A lot of it's BS in general.
Definitely. I mean, what you'd see if you came down to Colombia and spent some time, it's a great place to be. It doesn't have all the terrible attributes that you would see on, I think one of the worst things that probably came out, even though I love the show, is Narcos. When it came out on Netflix, everyone thinks that's how everyone lives in Colombia day to day. That's just not the case, and I was surprised when I first came here. I came down here, my brother's wedding, I was living in Hong Kong, came down here. I don't know what I was expecting to see, but I remember coming to Medellin and I was like, man, this city is way too developed. Like it's way too, like the middle of Medellin, where we are right now, kind of area called Poblado. I mean, it really is a developed city. Now, I would say Colombia as a whole, if you look at it macroeconomically, it is an area where you'd say, areas like Poblado, where we are today, it's developed world. Now when you go out to townships and whatnot, now you're in developing world. You could even see it's a mixture of everything you'd say if you use the terminology like frontier market, developing market, and developed market. All of them actually exist within Colombia today. So I think one of the things to think about when I say like problems versus, let's say how people attribute the macro risk or anything is really perception. One is like for guys that invest in Latin America every day, I would say Colombia is by far one of the safest markets in the region. And getting over that, I'd say, especially for, let's say some of your viewers are looking to raise capital, especially in Latin America, getting over the perception of American investors in Colombia oftentimes is the most difficult to move investors forward or move things forward. As far as actual running of the business, you'd have the traditional business risk, things like for guys who are, let's say real estate guys are looking to get into ag, you can't always control production volumes. Sure. If you're doing outdoor grows and you're not doing hydro grows, like indoor controlled grows, if you're doing hydro grows, you can get your production volumes to say, I'm going to bring this much within this much standard deviation of risk. In places like Colombia, you're doing soybean in Argentina, or you're doing cattle in the south of Brazil, wherever, to get your yields to an appropriate amount, you need to have a wider range. I would say from any ag business, this isn't specific to us, but really in ag in general, the best way to buffer out that risk is have a lot of working capital on hand and have a lot of smart guys around you. Yeah. I think that one of the most difficult things about operating in Latin America is being able to identify and maintain the best in class talent. Right. So people think when you come down to Latin America, or a place like Colombia, that salaries are much cheaper, that you say, okay, well, I can just run my American business from Colombia and it's not going to cost me anything. In reality, labor pools that are very sophisticated are global these days. So you're going to be paying global salaries for your best and brightest, and you still pay things like stock options, and you still pay things like make them partners in a company and whatnot. And getting over that mindset and thinking that, developing markets, everything is cheap, you'll never get good talent and whatnot. And that's not the case. I mean, there's guys here within Colombia that run banks in Wall Street. There's guys that all went to Stanford. There's families here that all went to Harvard. But you have everything in between that as well. So I would say a lot of it is about understanding how the markets really work is one of the most challenging things. One is you got to show up and understand how things work. And then for guys who are looking for investment or, getting people comfortable with the business model, a lot of it is educational based and saying, this is how things work because of my experience here and my team. And let me explain to you why it works this way.
That's good. I love it. When it comes down to raising the capital in the past, is that your department or is there other people that take that on? What does that look like?
That's Legacy Group's department. That's been my partner, myself, and the director of investor relations of our team called Josh. Yeah, so we raise all the capital for the company. We syndicate all the capital, both equity. We're looking at potentially doing a large debt round here first as portion to the Series C. I will be in charge with raising that as well. Now, obviously, we work alongside management for management projections, and they participate on calls. But that is the key focus of our team, the asset manager.
Okay, I love it. Is there any, tips or tricks that you would give along the way? Obviously, you guys have been pretty good at raising capital thus far.
Sure. I would say identify your niche early of who you're going after. Things like, I love some of the the programs that are coming out, the online raisings, whether you're doing Reg Ds or you're doing CFs. But when we see them, the scale really isn't there to make it interesting. I think for, early stage, if you're doing venture-backed companies, some of those that only need $1 million or $2 million, some of those online platforms for crowdfunding and whatnot can be interesting. Fees are high, and you're going to have a bunch of, decentralized investors. Hopefully they don't have voting shares, and it's going to be difficult. But I would say, have a specific value proposition. And also I like the idea of having a niche and being best in class in that niche. For us, we have kind of advantage because there is no other coffee like GP here in Colombia that would pitch out to my investors in America. There is nothing unless you're talking to the CEO of Starbucks and say, I want private exposure to Starbucks outside of public market securities. You really can't get into that coffee space. Yeah. So I like being the only one who can offer our securities. And the other is, what I'm seeing from a lot of high net worth, you could call them, let's say high-end retail, high net worth clients, is they want more security all the way through the understanding of to exit. They're very, very sophisticated. I think gone are the days where people, especially let's say in venture world, you're seeing all these tech companies just getting crushed on public market these days. A lot of people are just making valuations out of thin air. I think a lot of the high net worth investors want to know exactly what the value prop is and what they're going to get out of it. You don't have to have an investment banking background, but you better be pretty good with numbers and be able to walk through simple assumptions and say, this is what I think is going to happen year by year. This is why I think it's going to happen. And even if something obscure or something I didn't expect happens, here's the management team around me that can make it work no matter what. So I'm seeing more and more high net worth investors who want to get into alternative assets. Alternative assets is not just venture capital or things like I do. It's things like private real estate deals, because they don't love the returns they're seeing on public REITs, for instance. Yeah. They don't love what they're seeing in public markets. So if guys are, especially your viewers, are looking at raising capital, I see that high net worth individual, likely between a net worth $1 million to $20 million. They're heavily going after alternative assets, and they're looking for things that are unique.
Yeah, I like that. And you guys definitely have something unique. Being that you're one of the best and really the only other option out there, it really does make sense. And I'm sure your background in the financial space has been a big deal of just solidification of, hey, this is a good background to trust.
Absolutely. It helps. It definitely helps. And also the management team around us, if I was to put them on this call, I guarantee you'd be impressed.
Yeah. I would like to hear about the metaverse for just a moment and what you guys are playing around in that atmosphere. And then afterwards, just kind of hear what the plans are for the future with the companies.
Sure. So I'll give you the background of the three partners that started. I met them, end of 2019. One of the ones that's just incredibly talented guys. And they had an idea. Basically, they were starting in like character design, where you basically like 3D print models for sale of, let's say, the like trophy assets that you'd see, like a Batman asset and whatnot. But these guys are all high-end software engineers. They're high-end artists, both from concept artist point of view, all the way to 3D modeling and development. Where they've kind of grown up, they've created their own academy for training and development in the digital arts, video game space. And what they do really within the metaverse is they've had a lot of people reach out to them lately about NFT design. Sure. People love NFTs, and these guys are creating the art behind some of their NFTs. So it's more of a contracting type gig where they do really high end art. And in other areas are video game designs, mainly for metaverse video games. So things that the NFTs obviously become the tradable assets that become utilized within the games, right? So holistic games, big boy budgets. I would estimate they're probably the most sophisticated in Colombia today. Really what their goal is to create the most sophisticated BFX operation here in Latin America. They really want to, nowadays they're competing up against bids of the firms that operate out of Los Angeles and Montreal, which they see as the biggest competitors. And right now, they're fairly famous within Colombia. As soon as a couple of these games launch, they'll be famous globally. I think they have about 3 games that are in production now that will be globally known. All clients, really their primary client base is all US. They have a UK based client, US based client, international clients with real budgets to make special things.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, with where crypto's going and just the NFT space and metaverse and everything else, there's a lot of new exciting stuff, especially for investors to jump in sooner than later. With
Definitely.
all these huge companies, all the big companies are already into metaverse and getting started and really playing around with this. So it's leaving some clues, right, that we should all be mindful of. And not enough people are really even seeing this yet, but it will be game changing in the near future.
Definitely. And especially for, let's say, your listeners who are looking at new opportunities for jobs, let's say, a lot of people get out of university, especially in the United States, that they don't know where they're going to go work. They're finding it hard in the market. Literally, this is an industry where you can basically name your price. These guys, even down here in Colombia, you're talking about can be 6-figure USD salaries to work within this space. It's super exciting industry to be working within. And there's an ever needed capital or a labor pool necessary to move forward what all these companies are trying to do. If just one, let's say Epic Games or just Amazon could get their goals met with how much they want to compete in this metaverse space, they're going to need so many programmers and so many people to be part of the process. It's absolutely mind-blowing. In the salaries and benefits and whatnot that'll be available for this pool of talent is huge. So I think I agree with you that investors, there's a lot of things to be looking at, not only in, investing in individual cryptos or investing in individual NFTs. I think what you're going to see is a lot of grouping, like small video game units just getting swallowed whole by these large corporate acquisitions, because frankly, they'll pay for it just because they need the human talent. The human talent itself will justify these massive valuations. And it's going to be a very exciting time to be part of this industry, I would say, over the next decade. There's just so much capital being thrown at it, so much talent being thrown at it. There'd be a lot of naysayers that say, NFTs are worth nothing, crypto's worth nothing. But I'll tell you what, there's a lot of real money being thrown at it right now. So interesting.
From high level players, and the rest of the world is doing the same. So it's like, it will take over, like bottom line. And it will be really mind blowing. There's going to be more than enough money to go around. So like you said, the big and the need will be there. So the talent will get compensated well to just be available for it. So
definitely.
It's going to be mind blowing to see what that looks like.
Definitely. I mean, like simple developments like movie production.
Sure.
We've done some movie shorts here, actually in the offices right outside where I'm sitting. And the old version of the green screen used to be a pre-recorded video where you put, pretty faces in front of it. You do your acting. You can make acting more efficient. Well, it's gone beyond that now. The green screen now is a pre-made video game where a director can say, I don't like that tree. That tree's too green. I want it to be blue. I want this sky. I don't like the blue sky. I want it to be red. Well, if you have a pre-recorded green screen, you can be the most famous director in the world. You can't change it in real time. With video games, you can. So things that you would never expect, you say, a lot of people will say, video games are just for kids born after 1993. They're not going anywhere. Video game development is becoming a core, must-have skill in so many areas of the digital world. It's crazy. And you were getting interest from companies that you would never expect, whether it's, people who run lotteries internationally and say, look, I know if I don't get a younger audience for running lotteries, our average age of our client is 72 years old. So our clients are literally dying off. I need esports, right? I need an esports metaverse where I can get a younger client base to participate in government lotteries. That's one that me personally, I would have never expected until people started approaching the portfolio company, right? Sure. There's so many areas where this level of talent is becoming more and more valuable. And frankly, in areas like Colombia, I'm seeing salaries of these software engineers, conceptual artists who could not be happier just being able to design their own conceptual art from scratch, getting paid, 10 times what their parents make. And the kids are 25 years old. They couldn't be happier. I mean, that's like a lawyer's salary, here in Colombia. But the reason why they're able to justify that is because the international market is so strong, just pulling for that demand and that need for digital assets.
I got some good friends right now that are throwing 10, 20, 30 grand at some young kids that are like 13 years old to code in the metaverse, that they just bought land and they're, making these buildings and everything over the next couple months. And it's just, it's mind blowing, but it's happening right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. And some of the games, like to me, my background in accounting and finance, I can go sit next to these conceptual artists and I'll see them creating land assets in real time. Here, some of their partners have already sold land assets. It's funny because they've pre-sold land assets in some of the metaverse games that I literally can go and see the 3D designers and graphic artists building in real time, building in real time, and it's already pre-sold. It's very similar to a real estate project that says, okay, I've got this sales office outside. This is how great the building's going to look in the future. And here's your asset. And these guys are paying 100% up front. They say, I just want to secure my position. Yeah. And the capital there is, you're talking about hundreds you're into the millions of dollars. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Where guys
it's like astronomical numbers that you would be shocked to start to see. And you're like, wow, like people are paying this stuff for something that's digital.
Absolutely. The amount of capital flowing into this is wild. And, and we're a small firm out of Colombia, when some of these larger firms, you're talking about billions and billions of dollars, real capital waves coming in.
Yeah, no, it's powerful. Yeah. People need to be awakened on this stuff because it is going to be the future. So I'm glad that you guys are participating in it. It's very eye-opening and awesome that we got to speak on it. Tell me, Cole, what does the future hold for you guys? You guys have a lot of awesome things going on. You're about to hit records this year, which is very exciting. And congratulations once again. But what does the future look like for the company?
I think for us personally at Legacy Group, what we're trying to do, we want to develop both these firms. We want to develop Green Coffee Company. We want to develop Polygonus. I think we'll be going into a big Series C capital round here for Green Coffee. That'll just skyrocket us probably to 5-6 times our nearest competitor here in Colombia. And then at that force will be a global force. Polygonus here, if they need capital, we'll probably try to assist them along the way. But the great thing about them is they're profitable now and they have so much demand for product. Literally their limitation is find more software engineers, find more high-end concept artists or whatnot. They have whole teams of people that they need and the contracts are already there. So I think, for our point of view, we want to develop these two companies. If we come across, in our daily travels of other companies we'd like to fund, our typical approach is my partner, myself will fund the company from the seed stage. Before we go out to our investment audience, we make sure it's kind of vetted along the way. If, we typically don't take, early stage money from our outside investors due to the riskier nature of really early stage investing in Colombia. But we'll always keep our eyes out for that. So I would say for investors looking at us, there'll be a Green Coffee Company raise coming up here. That'll be very exciting. And then potentially a Polygonus one here in the next 12 months.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, Cole, thank you so much again for jumping in and tuning in with us today and just giving us the breakdown of your business and what you guys are up to. It's very motivational and awesome to see what you've been able to build up over the years. How can people get a hold of you guys?
People can check us out on www.legacy-group.co, and all of our emails will be attached within. So if you want to check out what we're doing, easy see our webpage, or I'm sure we can post my direct contact details with Brandon, if that would be easier.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes as well for everybody. So you guys will be able to tune in and check out everything that Cole has to offer. So very exciting. Thank you so much once again for tuning in with us and being a part of the show today. Guys, if you want to get a hold of me, then you can always do so on Instagram. It's Brandon Elliott Investments, otherwise Facebook.com/Brandon Elliott Investor. If you need any credit repair done for you services, check out creditrepairmobile.com. Otherwise, if you're looking to really get the education and understand how the banks are judging you, how to play the game with credit, and how to fix credit faster than anyone in the industry, build up massive lines of credit, several 6 figures, even 7 figures in funding very quickly, and then being able to leverage it, purchasing properties or acquisitions, real estate, agriculture. There's so many different things that you can really put the credit to work into, just like the banks do. Then check out creditcounselelite.com. That's www.creditcounselelite.com. And as always, Hit that subscribe button for Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast. Greatly appreciate everyone tuning in. Once you hit that subscribe button, every Monday, you'll get the new notification when the new episode comes out. After listening to a few episodes, do me that favor of leaving that 5-star review, and greatly appreciate everyone for tuning in today. We will see you on the next episode. Cole, appreciate you once again, man. Stay blessed.
Thank you, Brandon.
This has been another episode of Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast, brought to you by Brandon Elliott. For more information, please visit BrandonElliottInvestments.com. Also, please don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment below. Thanks again for joining. Until next time, God bless.